you very much, Mr. Benifei, Brando Benifei. You are an Italian politician. You are a member of the European Parliament since 2014, and you've been re-elected in 2019. And so as a member of the European Parliament, you are also a member of the Democratic Party, which is a social democratic party in Italy, I think. So maybe you could, but first, explain, why did you actually start working as a politician, and what was the plan, the motivation behind everything?
Well, I started my political activity as a school representative around 20 years ago, when I was running as students representative in my school, and that was the real drive for my becoming more politically active, because I wanted my school to become better, and in general students to have more rights. At that time, it was the beginning of the 2000s. There was a significant debate going on about the reasons and the pros and cons of globalization. And so I can say that also this debate about the impact of globalization on our societies has shaped my political engagement. In fact, the students groups were discussing a lot about these topics, and I can say I started with this very local connection with my city, and then also becoming a local representative in my provincial council. So it's like my sub-region area, like county area in Italy. But I also started from the very beginning with this attention to global issues, with these debates at the time on globalization. But then very soon, I became much engaged on European affairs, on European topics. For me, it was defining to be able to visit the European Parliament in a occasion when I was 19, with a trip organized by my youth movement, with MEPs of the time, and it was very important for me to get a direct experience of the institutions, but also I found out that the biggest building of the parliament was named after an Italian. That made me think about it and also try to learn more about that story. That Italian was Altiero Spinelli, one of the founding personalities of the European integration. And so I became very quickly also engaged into the European federalist movement that has been founded by Altiero Spinelli at the time in the 40s. And so I have to say I united very much this local dimension with European and global dimension, and I try to keep that in my engagement, so that I try to be close to my citizens and my voters and people that rely on the choices that I can make while being active in the European institutions. I have been brought so into politics by a lot of youth movements experience, not just at national level and local level, but also at European level. I've been the vice president of the Young European Socialists, so the youth movement of the Party of European Socialists, my political affiliation, and so I always believed, and that's my experience in my work, that you can change small things only if you look at them, small things that are that people care about, that can change their lives in a very direct way, only if you take into account the broader picture, and if you strive to change things at a larger degree. That's very easy to see now with the issue of climate change, that is influencing so directly the lives of many people in terms of the quality of the environment and their possibilities to work and live where they they are living today, and we know that things are changing in some places for the worst in terms of life availability of places. Think of climate refugees that are a reality already now. But that's not something that you can only deal with at the local level. You need to deal with that also with European and global choices. And that's a very obvious example, I would say, of that way of thinking that I've been engaged with, and I still believe it's very valid to consider as a political approach. Think global, act local, they have said at the time, and I think it's quite still relevant.
Quite important. That's very interesting what you all described. Before I want to talk a little bit about European politics, I would actually move first to Italian politics a little bit because you have elections, I think this September now. You mentioned it before that because your current government with Prime Minister Draghi is not active anymore, or it is somewhat, it can't continue. And so I read that your party actually now started a cooperation with former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi. Maybe you could describe like why this cooperation started and what the motivation is behind that.
No, I think it's fake news. I don't know where you've read that. There is no cooperation with Silvio Berlusconi whatsoever. It's our opponent.
Okay.
And very, very strongly against us. Is part of the coalition that is with the two other big right-wing parties. And in fact, we have to say that Berlusconi's party, which was part of the EPP, which is part of the EPP, so the European People's Party, like the CDU in Germany, is a party that has moved more and more to the extreme. Now we can for sure say that Forza Italia, Berlusconi's party, is the most right-wing party of EPP with a few others, and very, very keen to cooperate with the extreme right. And that's what he's doing. In fact, in the past, there was thoughts that Forza Italia could evolve into an EPP party more autonomous, more centrist, more able to develop into a party that could be allied with the left in the future, maybe when Berlusconi was not there anymore. But it has changed completely in the last months, due also to the choices made to bring Draghi down, and it has become a more and more right-wing party. And so no cooperation with Berlusconi is any more possible, if it was ever possible. In some times, for example, on Draghi government, we had the national unity, so national unity government with Berlusconi and also with another right-wing party. They brought it down, and so it's really, and it's another situation. Now they are moving more and more to the right. And my party now is polling at the same level of the leading right-wing party, the so-called Fratelli d'Italia, Brothers of Italy, the party of Giorgia Meloni. We are on a tie, but unfortunately the coalition, the coalition of the right-wing parties seems stronger. So it will be not easy. It will be difficult to win the elections. But we are fighting, and we are, in fact, getting some better results in the last polls. In fact, my party is growing, and because also I think people are realizing that Italy doesn't need to have a nationalist government, which will be the one that could be led by Meloni with the support of Berlusconi and Salvini, the other leaders of the right-wing coalition. So we will see. It's 33 days from now to the elections, and people, many people are still saying they don't know if they are going to vote and for whom. So there is a lot of space for change, and we are trying to get back to the possibility of winning, which clearly we can say that the leading right-wing party, Fratelli d'Italia has an advantage that is objective. They haven't been in government for the last 10 years. And so this is something that can be used to blame any problem with the others because they have not been in government. This has been an excuse for them in many phases to say they were not there. And yeah, it's true, but they were not ever, I would say, contributing to the best solutions for my country. They are a nationalistic party that is Eurosceptic, trying to hide this Euroscepticism, and very much in favor of the Trump America. This leader, Giorgia Meloni, always underlines her transatlantic credentials, but if you look at that very closely, she is close to the very far right of the US political spectrum. And this is also worrying, thinking of what might happen also in the next phases for the American politics, thinking also of the midterm elections.
So what is your take on that? Thinking that because as a neutral, like from a neutral perspective from me from Germany, it seems like in Italy you have quite a few like further right parties. So you have the Lega Nord, then you have the Fratelli or the Fratelli d'Italia, as you said. Then you have the Five Star Movement, which is not really like, I think, conservative, but it's somewhat populist. Maybe you could say that. Then you have the former party of Silvio Berlusconi, who's also very far right. So why is it that in Italy there seems to be this strong further right affiliation by people to these parties, that the people actually support these parties? Where does this feeling of people come from, that they want this or they need this strength or this national strength in politics that is discussed and postulated by these parties? Why do you think this exists like that?
Well, I think this is the result of a period of difficulty and that fatigue of democracy also in general. That is not only in Italy, and we have seen recently that also in France, the right was very, very strong at the elections, both at the presidential and then in the legislative. And things are going in this way in many countries. Clearly, Italy now is the most obvious example and most worrying. But it's, in my view, also a phase of the country, while we had for a long time more left-wing or technocratic governments, not the right-wing. The last right-wing government in Italy was made by them only with the right-wing parties, was until 2011, and then no more. So I think it's a phase that's it's a period that's in the democratic alternatives it happens. But also there are errors by the opponents of these people, because our alternative camp is divided in the sense that the Five Star have changed course after being very close to us, to a modern progressive party. They have gone back at the moment for a more populistic stance that we don't support. And the centrist liberals, they decided to run on their own. They were close to us also because they are more progressive liberals. This group of two parties called Azione, Action, and Italia Viva of Matteo Renzi, former prime minister. They are closer to us than to the right wing, but they chose to run alone. And with this electoral law in Italy, which is key that you understand that we don't have a proportional system like in Germany. We have a mixed system where 1/3 of the seats are attributed based on coalitions. And the right-wing coalition is very united. and all the alternative that comes from the socialist parties, the centrist liberals, the Greens, the 5-star also, consider that we govern together before Draghi. We are now split because the government of Conte before Draghi, the former prime minister, that government was made by the socialists, social democrats, so my party, the centrist, and the 5-star. And we were together, governing together. And now we are not united in the electoral competition, and this is the first problem.
Okay, I understand. So you hope at least that in September your party will gain the majority, so that you can actually still participate in the government and also have a majority in the parliament. How likely do you think that is, that actually that your party, the Democratic Party, will have a majority in parliament?
Well, it is possible, I would say probable, that we can come out as first party, as most voted party, but we will not have enough seats realistically to form a government on our own. So we could hope that the right wing gets a very small victory and they start fighting, and things can be put into a new discussion, so that we can avoid a nationalistic government and we could have again a national unity government. Then I can also say that our hope is that things change much more than what we see now in the polls. What I just said is based on what we see now in the polls, but maybe in the next 30 days things can change. We have stories in Italian politics of big changes in 30 days of campaigning. So we are hopeful that things can change more radically. And then in that case, we could think, if things change more, that we could even go ourselves in government. But it will not be easy. So we are also ready, in case it will happen, to do and to be at the head of the opposition and to contrast a nationalistic government. Hopefully it could last only a short time, because anyway they are not very united, the right wing. They are united now by a desire of power, but their personal relations, which in politics are important, and their positions are not really totally aligned, and they will have problems, I'm sure.
Okay. So I think that's already very interesting, and I think I would also like to continue on the one side on Italian politics, but I think we have also like a bigger problem, bigger crisis right now in Europe in general. Well, we have 2 points, I think, which is the climate crisis, and then we have the energy crisis. So first about the climate crisis. How strongly is it affecting right now Italy in particular? I mean, everybody can read in the news that like big rivers like the Po are only having like 50% of the water, I think, in it still, and the Garda Lake, for example, is also dropping. So how serious is it at the moment in Italy in particular?
Well, in my opinion, it's very serious everywhere. It's serious in Italy for some specific characteristics of the country. But if we look all over Europe, the situation is very bad in terms of the impact of the increasing temperatures and the changing weather. I think it's important that the European Parliament has pushed for very ambitious legislation on climate change, on fighting climate change in the last months. And we also are valuing this fight we made in our electoral campaign. Now we always say that we are the ones that in Europe have been fighting against the climate change, and we want also to get the vote now in the national politics, in the national elections, because we want to continue in that way. And I think it's very important that we are pushing more and more with the reduction of emissions and with more social measures to mitigate the impact of climate change also on the jobs and on social situations.
How do you think, like, when we now move from like the Italian level to the European level, how strong are we? How strongly are we now on the European level organizing these things? And do you think that on the European level we will have enough resources to combat climate change? Is it actually right now good enough, the policies that we have, because we have discussions by climate researchers that say that the 1.5 increase in temperatures globally will come much faster as the models right now predict. And we also see that right now we have this summer, which is really hot everywhere in Europe. We had last summer, which was already quite warm. And a couple of summers ago, 2018 was really strong, really hot. So is also maybe your take on that, your opinion that it actually, the climate change and the impact of climate change comes much faster than we actually are predicting, and that our models are actually wrong and that it actually comes much faster?
I'm not sure about that. I cannot say that for certain, but for certain I can say that we need to continue in the direction we have taken, and I think we need to be even more ambitious. I think that the European Union needs to bring together with even more determination, with even more conviction, the rest of the world to work against this catastrophe, because things are getting very bad for all the planet, and the resources issue that you mentioned is very important, because there are already data, not from me, but from the European Commission, that shows that we need more money to support the transition, to make it more accelerated. And in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of conversion of polluting facilities, etc. And so that's why we are pushing from the parliament. We are many MEPs and many politicians in general, also at national level. We are convinced that we need to pursue a further development of the so-called Next Generation EU recovery plan, because we have tapped into common debt to build this plan. And for climate change fighting, we need to continue this plan. We need more borrowing together. We need more resources that are pooled at the European level and that can be used also in the next years. So this is also a fight that we have been doing for a long time. We have been pushing for a long time as European federalists, because we think that the fiscal capacity of the European Union that we started building to have the Next Generation EU in place needs now to become a more fully fledged fiscal capacity to confront with these emergencies, and that short-termism and going for lengthy negotiations by the member states to find unanimity around decisions on budgetary choices is absolutely out of the reality of what we need now. So that's why also I think when we talk about climate change, we talk about energy policies, and we enlarge the view, we need to go for a further federalization of Europe. We need at least a core of European countries that become a more federal Europe.
I would actually completely agree with what you said, that we need more cooperation on a European level, and that Europe needs to somewhat develop into, in my opinion, into a European state that actually can challenge and tackle these problems more effectively on a European level. But I want to talk about first the goals, the climate goals that we have, and climate neutrality by 2050. Isn't this way too late, actually, in face of what we are seeing already in these heat conditions that we have now in the summer? And for me, for example, I live in Denmark right now, in Copenhagen, which is further north, and it's super hot outside. It's 27 degrees. And so you see it everywhere in Europe, like whether it's in the north, in the south, west, or east. So the temperatures are rising at a very, very fast pace. So aren't our goals by this climate neutrality in 30 years or almost 30 years, isn't that way too late because it's already happening right now?
Yeah, most probably it's going to be obvious to everyone that it's like you're saying. But as you know, it has been already a big political fight to get into these kind of decisions. So I hope that we can be able, and I will for sure fight for that, to accelerate the reaching of the targets, because we are having less and less time for sure.
Okay, so you would say, does the European Union have to maybe adjust these goals to say, hey, for example, the automotive sector with climate neutrality in the automotive sector, is that something that has to be adjusted? For example, German government has actually somewhat blocked this decision on the European level that engines right now, or diesel engines, diesel cars, and other fuel-burning motors will still be allowed. Although the European Parliament wanted these to be, I think, terminated by, I forgot which year it was. Was it 2030 maybe? I'm not sure, but
2035.
2035, okay. But isn't that's 2035? That's 13 years from now. So yeah, to me, I don't really understand.
I think it should be accelerated, but I think you can understand that also this date, also this timing has been attacked fiercely by a lot of people and stakeholders, saying that we are destroying the economy. So it's not easy to pursue these policies. I'm sure that we will realize that we need to do more in a shorter time.
Okay, but you're not sure whether that should be actually something that is going to be readjusted again, and because isn't that also a problem that we have?
I'm not sure, but there are two elements that you need to consider. One is obviously the pressure from the scientific community that could be important if they are more vocal on the insufficiency of what has been done, but also if the public opinion mobilizes. Because today, my impression is that for the majority of people, there is lack of understanding of what is happening, and that they are generically in favor of measures to stop the climate change, but they are not aware of the dangerousness of the situation, of the urgency of acting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there has to be actually done something. What is actually like?
People need to mobilize, because the most progressive politicians on these topics, they feel they are alone, because it's the majority of people are not still able to support more bold choices. The younger generations have to some extent more sensitivity, but European Union is an old continent of 60 plus people that are mostly not so keen in having more of this, and are worried that they don't want an electric car.
Okay, so you think that the problem is that the European citizens do not want an electric car, or what?
No, the European citizens don't understand that if they don't abandon some ways of doing things that we have, like having cars that are more polluting, there will be no life anymore at all in the planet. I don't think they are understanding. And as I said, the large part of our society is old and have other views on the future and don't believe.
You meant the plus 60 years old citizens. So
yes,
the citizens who are older than 60 years.
I meant,
okay.
Yeah, I meant 60 plus years old. Yes, that they if you talk with many of them, their problem is that they don't want to change their car. They don't want electric car. They are. We had a lot of discussions about this in the parliament, about the fact that we have an hostile public opinion on this kind of bolder moves, like stopping combustion engine cars. I don't know what data you have, but my empirical survey and that of many of my colleagues is that we are fighting against the common sense of public opinion on these topics.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I would probably agree with that. Still, it's still going on. The crisis is still here, and there's not enough happening.
And that's why we are doing. That's why we are already doing things. Otherwise, if we just follow the majority of the public opinion, in my view, we would be doing less than what we are doing. Because in the end, there are impacts on the energy consumption and availability, on the usage of certain systems or others, and people are not all fully understanding. And if we don't deal with that, we can discuss between people that are more educated, but things will not change.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's actually a good answer. My last question would be, Mr. Benifei, to you, because you have only limited time, is how do you actually assess now the energy situation in Europe? Germany has a big dependency on Russian gas still. Italy also does, which I did not know, but it does. But Italy also has, I think, LNG terminals on the coast, and has, I think, negotiations with Algeria, I think, about gas transits or something. So how do you assess the entire European gas situation at the moment, and how can we actually be more independent from Russian gas?
Well, we need a mixture of actions. We need to get more availability of gas from other sources, like the ones you mentioned that are now new suppliers for Italy, because gas is anyway transitional energy that we cannot abandon from one day to the other. Then some other countries have nuclear energy that takes a long time to develop, and it has not a general consensus. Especially in Italy, this is not the way that we are thinking of going towards. We are not going to have nuclear. However, it's important that some countries have taken this choice and have that in their energy mix. It's perfectly legitimate. But then we need to accelerate the renewables and put that side by side with the gas that we are using. And also, I think we should spend a lot of money in research to develop new ways, new sources, new technologies for the energy consumption. And so the actions to be taken are many, and we need not to lose any time. And I don't think we should put ourselves again into some other kind of dependencies. If we leave the dependency from Russia, we need to be sure that we maintain a diversity of availability of energy, so that we can be more energy autonomous and more also environmentally friendly. So I think we just need to go on with these actions, but it goes back to what I've said earlier. The present architecture of the European Union is completely insufficient to pursue these ideas, with these actions, with the necessary acceleration. We are blocked by vetoes powers and by the methods that bring to the minimum common denominator, so not to ambitious choices. We have seen that in the last weeks about the choices on energy. So I think we still need to bring the discussion on how we restructure the power in the European institutions, and how we, in fact, pool more sovereignty together if we want to be efficient. Otherwise, I think we will be still in big trouble.
Mm-hmm. Okay. On this sentence, thank you very much, Mr. Benifei, for the interview. It was very nice to have you on my podcast. And maybe we can also do that sometime later in the year, or maybe next year again, if you have time. And if you want to use the last minute to make advertisements for yourself or your party, you can now do that if you want to.
No, I don't need that. I just want to say that I think it's important that people are informed, and that also podcasts like this one can bring our voices to more listeners. And I hope that the people that are listening, that have listened, enjoyed some ideas coming from my experience as a politician.
Okay, perfect. Then thank you very much. And maybe we'll talk next time.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.